Are you acquainted with Victoria Principal? On American television, she used to be the pinnacle of beauty, a brilliant star in Dallas who is well known, strong, and never content to take a back seat. Wearing a tight white coat, she emerged from a black limousine on set with icy, piercing eyes. She was always the last to depart, sticking behind to provide suggestions on the script, insisted on lighting adjustments for every facial aspect, and never missed a line. She was a cog in the mechanism that made a legend, not just an actor. At one point, she caused Andy Gibb lose himself entirely, won over Frank Sinatra, and moved Anthony Perkins. She had 2 marriages. While one ended peacefully, the other broke down in the midst of financial scandal and rumors of abuse. She never had children, and never lived to win men over. She stayed faithful to herself throughout her life. She also made the decision to leave in order to protect the freedom she had never relinquished. Even though many people clung to marriage, she still wonders, was I right, as she lives alone on an animal rescue ranch at the age of 75, or am I merely pretending that I have no regrets? The tale of Victoria Principal's passionate love and the moments she decided to leave will stick with you long after this video is over, so stay tuned. Before delving completely into her sad affair with Andy Gibb, Victoria had a variety of relationships that were brief but revealed a lot about her as a young woman, inquisitive, sensitive, yet sensible enough to not lose herself. The name Frank Sinatra was among the most unexpected. Victoria went on a couple dates with the famed American singer who was about 35 years her older, in the early 1970s, while she was still a novice figuring out Hollywood. She simply mentioned in a brief interview that she much admired him, but that the age difference was too big to hope for something long-lasting. She never went into further detail. Victoria had an intense relationship with Anthony Perkins, the primary actor in Psycho, even before Sinatra. At the time, Perkins was still juggling his sexuality with the pressures of society. We were quite careful with each other. Yet that relationship was once characterized as Anthony's first physical love, which Victoria later corroborated. The other was not owned by anyone. There were no assurances given. 2 lonely individuals who once took refuge in one another. Victoria entered her first marriage with the genuine conviction that marriage could provide stability, putting aside her romantic interests as a young woman. However, she never anticipated that the concept of stability itself would prove to be so disheartening and demoralizing. Victoria Principal was playing Pamela Barnes on CBS's Dallas in 1978, when her career was at its height. Christopher Skinner, a budding actor and filmmaker in the American television industry, was someone she met on set. Skinner was well known at the time for his part in James at 16, and he went on to make cameos in popular television series, like Chips and Dallas. Although brief, the interaction had a significant impact. They chose to get married that same year after only 3 dates. Victoria once characterized the sensation as dazzling and elegant. Wearing a traditional black 3-piece suit and a black bow tie, Skinner walked next to her as though the timing and the person had all fallen into place. But the dream was very different from reality. Victoria worked on the set for up to 75 hours every week. Victoria was never able to fulfill Skinner's wish for a wife who would stay at home and raise a family. She had no intention of stopping for anyone. She chose to focus entirely on her job, and turn down anything that would require her to sacrifice her identity, not because she was selfish but rather because it was her way of life. Only 2 persons realized they loved in different ways. There was no scandal or third party in the marriage. They split up in 1980, after 2 years of dating, and a year later they quietly completed their divorce. Victoria never voiced her disapproval of her ex-husband in public. She continued to regard the marriage as an experience rather than a failure. Following the breakup, Skinner stepped back from the limelight. He was once the object of many women's affections, but he never got married again, as if preferring tranquility over the spotlight. Christopher Skinner is still unmarried and reclusive, avoiding the media. With all of its early thrill and calm conclusion, that first marriage was the epitome of youth's rash blunders. While 3 dates might be sufficient to walk down the aisle together, they are insufficient to determine whether you are genuinely headed in the same direction. Her subsequent love affair was a very deep dive, if her first marriage was a decision made too quickly. Victoria met Andy Gibb, the Bee Gees' youngest vocalist, on a TV show less than a year after she and Christopher Skinner signed their divorce papers. For the first time she found herself unable to resist the allure of a flaming, all-consuming love that looked impenetrable but ultimately suffocated them both when it was pushed too far. The chemistry between Victoria Principal and Andy Gibb was regarded as immediate and electric when they first met in January 1981 on The John Davidson Show. Victoria was 31 years old at the time, and her portrayal of Pamela had already made her famous. Dallas, Andy, the Bee Gees' youngest sibling, and only 23 years old, was recently let go from Solid Gold for persistent tardiness and unpredictable conduct associated with drug usage. He said, "I only watched Dallas because of her in public. He was nice, young and attractive. It was a lovely compliment to Victoria. It was a source of admiration for viewers. For those who knew Andy well, however, it was an indication that he was a soul in dire need of something to cling to. They became deeply in love. No caution, no hiding." In addition to accompanying Victoria on TV specials and public appearances, Andy also recorded a duet called All I Have to Do Is Dream. Released in the middle of 1981, the track reached its highest position on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 51. It was Victoria's sole record, and Andy's last single, a seemingly lovely love ballad that turned out to be nothing more than the prelude to a catastrophe. On set, Victoria was putting in up to 75 hours each week, but Andy was there whenever she needed him. When she didn't answer, he left dozens of messages on her voicemail. He once stood outside the studio for 4 hours in order to have a brief conversation with her. It was a form of devotion to Victoria, but it was alarming to others around her. Andy didn't love Victoria, according to a close friend. Her presence was an addiction for him. Victoria had no desire to get married again. She wanted to be in charge of her life after going through one peaceful divorce. However, Andy was unable to restrain himself. His love became unstable, demanding, and furious. He was afraid of losing her. He used drugs as a means of clinging to something that was already evaporating. Victoria issued an ultimatum to him in March 1982. "You have to decide between the drugs and me." Andy was unable to decide though, and Victoria was the one who left once more. Victoria told others that the separation happened first, followed by the drug usage, years after Andy Gibb's death. She added, however, that although I tried my best to assist him, I eventually had to tell him. He had to decide between his issue and me. Andy fell into a deep state of sorrow following the split. He lost control of his finances, stopped performing, and avoided the studio. He was bedridden for 2 weeks at one point, unable to move. Friends grew apart. He was dropped by the label, both physically and figuratively. His heart started to break. Andy Gibb passed away from viral myocarditis in March 1988, 2 days after turning 30. Many believed that his death was the consequence of a protracted tragic unraveling of love, fame, and the man himself, even if the official cause was illness. Victoria did not appear publicly at the funeral, but in a later interview, when asked if she regretted anything, she simply said, "I just didn't expect that peace to be death." And to this day many still wonder, did she truly let go of it all, or did she carry a shard of that heartbreak with her for the rest of her life? After parting ways with Andy Gibb in March 1982, Victoria Principal said she wanted some peace, but life, it seemed, was never willing to let her rest for long. In early 1983, she met Dr. Harry Glassman, a well-known plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, in the most unexpected of circumstances. Victoria had just walked away from a heartbreak with Andy, while Harry was entangled in a property dispute with his ex-wife Jane. There were even rumors that the ring he gave Victoria was a recycled wedding band. Victoria firmly denied it. A gentle reply, but also a powerful statement of autonomy, from a woman who had already endured enough pain. Perhaps because they were both in a state of fracture, they found in each other a kind of temporary peace, one that soon grew into something serious. Victoria didn't just love Harry, she loved his 2 children from a previous marriage, and cared for them as if they were her own, though she had never intended to remarry. She once said, "If I ever marry again, the only man I'd ever want to marry is Harry," and she did just that. On June 23, 1985, they were wed in Dallas, at a time when Victoria was one of the biggest stars in America, as Pamela Ewing. They lived in a nearly 7,000-square-foot home in Beverly Hills, far from the spotlight, almost never discussing their private lives. Images of the couple hand in hand at events from the 1983 Golden Globes to a charity galas in 2000 suggested a life of harmony and lasting affection. To many this was a different Victoria, mature, discreet, and finally anchored after storms of romance. They had no children together. Rumors spread that Victoria didn't want to have children out of fear it would affect her figure, especially since she was running her own skincare company, building a brand around the idea of natural beauty. But in an interview with TV Guide, she made a rare, vulnerable admission. It was one of the few times that strong, self-possessed woman revealed a crack, small but painfully real, and over time that crack widened. They remained close for nearly 21 years, with a relationship so private, the press rarely touched it. They had no children. Rumors persisted about her not wanting to sacrifice her appearance, but again she firmly stated, "I don't have children not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't." Then in May 2006, Victoria filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The divorce petition was filed at the Los Angeles Superior Court on May 23, 2006. The divorce was finalized in December that same year. Victoria later moved to Malibu, alongside properties she owned in Big Sur, California, and Switzerland. So why did this two-decade-long marriage, so seemingly grounded, come to an end? The first crack appeared publicly in 2002, when Beverly Hills police raided their home after receiving reports that the actress had been physically assaulted, leaving marks on her eye, lip, neck and cheek. Glassman was arrested, blaming Victoria's drinking, and later released on £35,000 bail. The charges were eventually dropped, and Glassman claimed the incident was a misunderstanding with police, attributing it to Victoria's alleged alcohol use. But the shadow of that incident lingered behind their closed doors. When the divorce unfolded, the media began digging deeper. Many questioned whether Dr. Glassman, a renowned cosmetic surgeon, had ever performed procedures on his own wife, and if he secretly kept documentation of every enhancement. And if so, did he use that as leverage to blackmail her, to pressure Victoria into choosing between silence or public exposure? Rumors grew louder when multiple sources claimed Victoria had to pay over $50 million to settle the division of assets, despite having a prenuptial agreement, in order to protect both their reputations. In the face of growing speculation, she hit back firmly. "That is a vicious fabrication. I didn't pay for silence. I paid to get my peace back." Their marriage, in the end, came to a close, not with the loud spectacle of a typical Hollywood breakup, but with a quiet undercurrent of shadows and unanswered questions. No one truly knows what happened inside that Beverly Hills mansion, but one thing is certain: Victoria chose to walk away once again, not because she didn't try, but because she could no longer endure living in a love where respect had faded, and everything else was slowly falling silent. Beyond a personal life marked by upheaval and heartbreak, she was also a CEO, a model of the modern, successful independent woman. And that didn't happen by chance. Behind Victoria Principal's glamorous appearance was someone who had spent years struggling with her own skin. During the filming of Dallas, constant makeup, harsh lighting, and an exhausting schedule left her face dry, lifeless, and worn down. "I used to cry when I looked in the mirror," she recalled. "And I wondered, what must it be like for other women if I feel this helpless, while having all the resources at my disposal?" She created the skincare brand Principal Secret, which focuses on nourishment and restoration, in 1989 as a result of her encounter. Victoria, however, was actively involved in the product's development, in contrast to many celebrities who only endorse a product. In order to make sure the message matched her philosophy, that women don't need to change themselves, she spent months testing each solution on her own skin, rejected dozens of prototypes because the perfume wasn't natural enough, and even wrote her own ad content. "All they have to do is take regular, gentle care of themselves. Victoria shunned gaudy marketing even as CEO. There were no 18-year-old models or special effects in her advertisements. Only Victoria, 40 years old, said, "I didn't recognize myself once, but I've learned to love myself again," while staring directly into the camera. With that genuineness, Principal Secret developed a devoted following of largely middle-aged women who had long felt underutilized and became a major brand in television-distributed cosmetics for more than 25 years, making hundreds of millions of dollars. Over the course of 3 decades, Principal Secret is estimated by industry experts to have earned over $1 billion in income. Being the brand's creator, CEO, and exclusive spokesperson, Victoria Principal is thought to have amassed a personal fortune of between $200 and $300 million, which is significantly more than her acting salary. In addition to demonstrating her financial savvy, her accomplishment put her in the company of notable female beauty industry entrepreneurs like Cindy Crawford, Meaningful Beauty, and Jessica Alba, The Honest Company. However, Victoria didn't require media support or social media like they did. She used just honesty, self-control, and unwavering determination to create a whole beauty empire. Success, of course, was accompanied by criticism. Victoria came under public scrutiny for her promotion of natural beauty. There were rumors that she had undergone cosmetic surgery by her spouse, plastic surgeon Harry Glassman. Despite her adamant denial of the allegations, she never played the victim. With the quiet strength of someone who knows who she is and doesn't need to prove it to anyone, she instead decided to keep quiet. Victoria left the beauty industry in 2019, after leading her company for more than 20 years. No fanfare, no news conference, just a quick statement: "It's time for me to focus on other things, like peace, animals, and the natural world." Additionally, this leave was not a conclusion. Similar to her departure from Hollywood, it was a decision. A woman who, after reaching the pinnacle, decided to descend in order to live her life as she saw fit. No concessions, no need for authorization, and no one else's consent is needed. Victoria Principal looked skyward, while many aging actors withdraw into rose gardens or embark on opulent vacations. She said in a well-known interview that she had bought a ticket for Virgin Galactic's commercial spaceflight, the billionaire Richard Branson's ambitious space tourism project, not for publicity or to add another accomplishment to a resume already brimming with honors, but just because I want to observe the Earth from a distance, and I hope to get back safely, as she stated. That dream wasn't the result of a fleeting impulse. She had a strong interest in astronomy when she was a young girl. She devoured books about the cosmos, spent many hours stargazing, and cultivated a deep-seated belief that all people, whether well-known or obscure, are but little dots in the vastness of space. But she didn't really dare to make that desire a reality until she had broken free from the bonds of marriage, career, and stage lights. It creates a startling contrast to see a woman who was previously renowned for her beauty wanting to leave the planet. Perhaps Victoria had only one goal after years of being characterized by a perfect physique, a faultless face, and the image of an immortal woman: to see herself and humanity from a distance that would allow her to separate what is true from what has been nothing more than makeup applied for too long, and to escape all the images that the world had imposed onto her. Victoria Principal believed that there was nothing to prove in space. It was a place to let go. There were no flashlights or flawless eyeliner, just a person, alone with the universe, and at last content with her own insignificance. Is she going to go to space? It might not matter, because she had already gone farther than most of us will ever go when she purchased that ticket and dared to tell the world about her desire. Beyond the boundaries we set for ourselves, but not into the sky. Victoria Principal made the decision to discreetly withdraw to a little nook on the outskirts of Los Angeles after the lights went out, after the intense love affairs that flared and then died, and after every time she rose from the ashes. No more cameras, no more red carpets. Instead, she would live out the rest of her days tending to creatures that the world had forgotten in a large refuge. The formerly well-known actress has been caring for scores of abused or abandoned dogs, cats, and other animals since 2012. This place wasn't opened by her to attract attention. She didn't initiate a movement either. It was just a peaceful journey, in keeping with her life's philosophy of gentleness but ferocity. She greeted every animal, named them, took them to the vet, changed their routines, and remained at their side until they recovered. Many people think it's just a former Hollywood celebrity going about her quiet life. However, Victoria saw it as a means of recovery. Perhaps she poured her love into creatures that were impervious to treachery when she lost faith in human-to-human love. I don't have to be attractive for them. I don't have to be well known for them, she previously remarked. They just need me to be gentle and present. Victoria disclosed in a rare interview that she had spent a large portion of her life feeling noticed, but never fully understood. She could finally be herself in a judgment-free environment, simply stretching out a hand and listening to the laborious breath of a famished animal. No makeup, no performance. The sanctuary has no signs and no tours, but many who have been there say it seems serene and calm, like a monastery. Furthermore, Victoria appeared more at ease than she had ever appeared in any part while wearing an old button-up shirt, bare-faced, and with crow's feet framing her eyes. The silent spirits who were unable to speak yet somehow saved a heart that had suffered too much commotion, may have been Victoria Principal's greatest love in the end, rather than any man. The quiet post-Christmas atmosphere of Victoria Principal's Malibu mansion abruptly descended into a media frenzy on December 26, 2005. Maribel Benegas, her longtime cleaner, had gone for a walk with the actress's cherished dog, but didn't make it back in time. Victoria's pet, whom she regarded as her own children, was reportedly coughing furiously, experiencing back discomfort, and displaying indications of being dragged and bleeding when she returned. Victoria was furious, and summoned the housekeeper to confront her. She allegedly took a revolver from inside the house and pointed it straight at the woman after not receiving what she believed to be a good explanation, based on what Benegas says. In the end, the two went to court together. Benegas claimed that because she had demanded to be paid her past due salary, she had been threatened with death if she didn't leave the residence right away. Victoria, however, claimed that the incident had gotten out of hand to the point that she felt threatened, and that she took action to protect herself and her pet. Although no criminal charges were brought, the public was taken aback. This was the same woman who had left Hollywood to live a peaceful life surrounded by animals and nature, and who was renowned for her grace and compassion. She was now facing charges of aggressive behavior after allegedly threatening the life of a staff member over what appeared to be a minor incident. Major media publications, including ABC News and People, featured the story on their front pages. The Telegraph went so far as to characterize the event as a violent clash between two worlds, the shadow of her own power and the caring star. The incident's effects persisted even after Benegas formally apologized and dismissed the case. Victoria's reputation as a healer was no longer unchallenged. There was a crack in something. Victoria Principal knew her value without the need for praise. She made the decision to leave everything her life. She did so not out of weakness, but rather because she knew what made her feel at ease, whether it was from love or attention. Every decision she made, from becoming a beauty icon on film, to becoming the CEO of a well-known skincare company, to becoming a recluse woman on a ranch with animals and fantasies of seeing Earth from space, was silent but wholly her own. She never had children. When she fell in love with a puppy, she once drew a gun. Although her decisions may have been questioned by some, she remained fiercely loyal to herself throughout her life. Perhaps the greatest legacy Victoria Principal leaves behind is her silent, unflinching tenacity. How about you? Did you ever have to leave something you loved in order to protect yourself? How would you feel about living a life without the approval of others, nevertheless feels complete and profoundly significant in its own right? Sometimes your story is just what someone else needs to hear, so please share your ideas in the comments section below. To ensure that you don't miss our next videos on Victoria Principal and other iconic celebrities, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to continue discovering more trips like this one. See you in the following tale.